Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the zkStudy Club. Today, we're excited to welcome Eylon Yogev from Bar-Ilan University, and he's going to be presenting work that he co-authored with Alessandro Chiesa from UC Berkeley on subquadratic, succinct, non-interactive arguments in the random oracle model. So with that, over to you, Eylon. Thanks a lot for being here.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Okay, this is, as you said, joint work with Alessandro Chiesa. I'm going to talk about SNARGs in general. I'm going to talk about a new construction of SNARGs in the random oracle model. So what I'm going to do in this talk, so I want to present exactly what our result is, okay? And I have to be slightly precise in this. I'm going to show you the new construction. I assume we'll not really get to how you prove the security, but if we have time, we'll get to that. But I want to start with just like really 1 minute about this slight landscape of what is a proof system, okay? And to make sure like we are all sitting on common ground and we know what we're talking about. And I think this is also very informative. Okay, so the really classical, proof system, this is what's called an NP proof system. We have some, what we call a language L, okay? This can be like R1 CS or just the language of satisfiable formulas and so on. Okay, I'm not gonna be like focused on exactly the encoding of the instance and constraints and stuff like that. So we just have some language L. And we have some instance, and the verifier is wondering, is X, is this instance, in the language? Okay, is this formula satisfiable? Is this list of constraints, can they be simultaneously satisfied? Okay, by some assignment to variables. And the NP proof system can be viewed as follows. We have some prover, and this is like this powerful prover. He has what's called a witness. He has like assignments to all the variables that make everything satisfiable. And he's sending this witness to the verifier. And we usually have these two requirements. We have what we call completeness, means that if X is indeed in the language, then there exists some witness W, okay, the W that he sends, such that when you run this verifier algorithm, okay, denoted here by V, with the instance X and the witness W is going to output 1. Okay, output 1 meaning, yeah, I agree, okay, I concur that this is in the language. And soundness says that if X is not in the language, then no matter what the prover says, okay, for all W, the verifier is just going to reject. So it's going to say 0. Okay, so this is like a perfectly sound proof system for the language L with 1 round of interaction. Okay, maybe just before we move on, let me say, please, if you have any question whatsoever, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Okay. While this was 1 round, we have what's called an interactive proof system, okay, or really like a whole class of different types of proof systems, where in general we still have a language and an instance X, and now the prover and the verifier, they can communicate in many rounds. And many of the proof systems you might have heard of actually are exactly the same setting, only depends on these following parameters. So we have the communication complexity, okay, how many bits are sent during this interaction. We have the number of rounds. We have the number of bits that the verifier reads, okay, we'll see this in a second. We have the class of cheating provers, I'll also talk about this. And we have some setup. Okay, if they like share some initial setups and initial randomness and so on. Okay, let me give you a few examples that we're actually gonna use in this talk. So IP is just the class of all interactive proofs. Okay, the class of all languages that can be decided by interactive proof. You can have many rounds, and the verifier reads the entire communication. And this class, we know, like it's very powerful. It captures the entire P space. Okay, so things like way beyond NP. Okay, these are like extremely hard languages, and they all have like interactive proofs. if you have what's called a PCP, this is a proof system in the same setting, okay, just different parameters. This is a one round, so there's no interaction, okay? The prover sends just one message to the verifier, just like an NP proof system that we saw. The only difference is that the verifier is local, okay? What I mean by local verifier, so if the prover sent this very long proof, the verifier only reads a few symbols from the proof. Okay, so he randomly, he tosses some coins, randomly decides on a few bits or symbols to read, okay, maybe field elements, and then decides if to accept or reject. And we have like the big PCP theorem saying that, in this model with like log and random bits, okay, like not extremely important, the parameters, and O of 1 queries, so it can really be even reduced to 3 queries. This class captures NP, okay? So it has the same power as an NP proof system. Okay. You can actually generalize this, and you can take the interactive proof system, and you can take the properties of PCP, and you can combine them together, and you get something that I assume at least most of you heard called an IOP. Okay, this is an interactive oracle proof. This is a proof system where we allow many rounds of interaction. So not like a PCP here, we allow many rounds of interaction, but the prover is sending like some message. The verifier only reads a few bits from this message. Okay, then the verifier can send some message back to the prover. The prover responds with a new message, and again, the verifier only reads a few bits of this message. Okay, so we have many rounds, but a local verifier. Okay, local in the sense that he reads only a few bits of each communication round. And something that I'm calling here, I think for the first time, as the IOP theorem. Okay, some remarkable property of this IOP that we can actually achieve IOPs with linear communication. Okay, and this is like in sharp contrast to PCPs, where currently we do not know how to get PCPs with linear communication. So if I go back here, the PCP, this thing was actually pretty big. Okay, linear like in the number of variables, okay, for the SAT formula. Okay, linear in the instance, let's say. Okay. After all this, we have something that we call a SNARG. Okay, actually could have started one step before with an interactive succinct argument. Okay, but let's go all the way to a SNARG. So this is going to be a succinct non-interactive argument. So this really tries to capture the best of all worlds. Okay, the prover is going to be non-interactive. It's one round. Okay, the prover just sends a proof. Okay. Now, instead of sending a long proof and the verifier reading a few bits from the proof, the entire proof is just short. Okay, so this is the entire proof. So the verifier is going to read all of this, all of the proof, but he's actually, you could think of him as local because the proof anyway, like, is very short. Okay. And this thing is actually impossible in general. Okay. But it is possible if you bring in the magic of crypto and you allow computational soundness, which I'm gonna talk about now. Okay, once you relax the soundness to computational, suddenly this magical object called SNARGs is possible, and we can construct it. And I could say like all the fun starts here, and this is quite a strong primitive. Okay. We currently don't really know how to build it from what we call falsifiable assumptions or very like simple theoretical assumptions, but we have many constructions from slightly more heavy assumptions, and we'll see one today. Okay, so the focus of this talk is going to be about SNARGs in the random oracle model. So here we have a prover, we have a verifier. The prover sends one message, this is the SNARG, okay? And this is in the random oracle model. So what do I mean by a random oracle model? Both the prover and verifier I assume they have some shared resource called a random oracle. I'm denoting it by this zeta, okay? It's some function that can take an arbitrary string and outputs lambda bits, okay? Lambda is gonna be like our security parameter, okay? Or a function of the security parameter. So they both have oracle access to this function, okay? In reality, later, like you can heuristically implement this function by some like crazy cryptographic hash function like SHA-256 or something like that. But to analyze things and to prove security, what we're doing, we're proving it in the random oracle model. So I'm assuming that every input here is just mapped to some random lambda bit string. And the prover and verifier have only oracle access to this function. So they can send the query X and they get back the response Y. Okay, and we're going to measure the number of queries that they do to this oracle. Okay, so beyond that, if they didn't query X, they have no information about what the value Y is, regardless of what any other queries they did. Okay, so this is like a truly random function that sits in the sky and everybody has access to it. The prover, the cheating prover, and the verifier. So what we require from this proof system is that the soundness is computational. Okay, so what is computational soundness? I'm gonna define it, I'm gonna explain, and I have some slight mathematical notation here. This is, I'm gonna say that the system has T epsilon security, okay, and these T and epsilon are gonna follow us for the rest of the talk. So what is T epsilon security? T epsilon security means that any T query unbounded adversary P, so my cheating prover P, he has unbounded computational power, okay, but he's only limited to do T queries to the random oracle. This is the only limitation that I'm putting on the prover. So here I'm saying that if we really sample this random oracle from the functions of all, all functions that output lambda, so this is like a truly random function, and I'm running the cheating prover with oracle access to this random oracle. He gives me some output pi. The probability that the verifier is gonna accept this proof, okay, is at most epsilon. So if my instance is not in the, of course we have the same completeness, okay? Like if X is in the language, then the verifier is gonna accept with probability 1. Okay, I'm talking about soundness. If X is not in the language, if this is a false statement, the probability that any cheating prover that does at most T queries is gonna convince me, is gonna fool me, is at most epsilon. Okay, any questions? Somebody wrote something. Okay. So this is a SNARG and the random oracle. Yes, Alex. You wanted to ask?
No, I was just going to say, Eylon, if there are questions that pop up in the chat, I will. I can read them aloud, so you don't have to keep watching.
Okay.
But there's none so far. Thanks.
Okay. 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 So why do we study SNARGs in the random oracle model? Okay. The first and maybe the most important reason is that it's an elegant model. So like we like elegant things and we like to study them. Okay, and it's elegant partially because it's an information theoretic model. Okay, so it doesn't really go and assume that P is different than NP or some group is hard to compute discrete log or any computational assumption or specific assumption. Okay. It's an information theoretic model, assuming that cheating prover has this oracle access to this completely random function. Okay, it's not just a model. We actually have very nice constructions. Okay, the most popular ones are the famous Micali construction and recently the BCS construction. We'll talk about them. Okay, so it's a model that it's nice and it supports good constructions. What can you do with this model? Well, heuristically, as we said, you can actually just take any crazy hash function like SHA-256 or some other hash function, and you just implement the random oracle with this function, and then you get a concrete scheme. Okay, so this really gives you like just a scheme that you can implement, and it uses very lightweight crypto. Okay, like these hash functions are usually quite easy to compute. And this is like opposed to, let's say, other assumptions or over lattices or stuff where things get slightly hard to compute. It's plausibly post-quantum secure, and actually there are proofs of these constructions to be post-quantum secure in the random oracle model. So if you assume your like SHA-256 is also post-quantum secure, then you get a construction that's also plausibly post-quantum secure. So that's a big bonus. You don't have a lot of setup, okay? So the only like quote unquote setup you have in the system is just agreeing on this random function, okay? And this is actually deployed today in various systems. I guess you even know more about this than me. Okay. So what constructions do we have of SNARGs in the random oracle model? So we have two main constructions, the Micali and the BCS. They both work in the same paradigm. Okay, so this is like the high-level overview of how the construction works. It takes information theoretic proof, okay, that we talked about in the beginning. So Micali takes a PCP and BCS takes an IOP. I'm gonna be focused like on the simple PCP, like single round case here, okay? But like everything I say actually can be applied to IOPs. So Micali actually took a PCP, then he took a cryptographic commitment, okay, that supports local opening. This is like what you know as a Merkle hash, okay, a Merkle tree. And this you can easily build in the random oracle model. And then you take these two together and you compile them to a succinct argument. Okay, this is like the high level overview of the construction. And we're going to slightly more detail. I just want to remind again what the PCP is if somebody forgot. So a PCP is a single message. Okay, I have a PCP prover, he sends a single message. The verifier just, this message might be long, so it's not succinct. Okay, it might be like a huge message. It's a proof for some statement. Okay, some X's in the language, or maybe some algorithm on input X, you know, outputs Y after running for T steps. So it's like some huge computation. And this proof is going to be usually like much larger than this computation. Okay, but what is succinct in this proof system is that the PCP verifier, he only needs to read a few locations, okay, from the proof to be convinced. Okay, so how does Micali's SNARG work? So what is the honest prover gonna do? The honest prover is gonna compute a PCP, okay, for the statement. Okay, so we have this some statement or large computation. He's gonna compute a PCP. He's gonna write this. So this yellow or orange, I don't know, boxes here are like all the symbols of the PCP. He's going to commit to this PCP, okay? So he uses the random oracle and uses a Merkle hash to start hashing the symbols together until he gets like the root of the tree, okay? So this root of the tree is actually just a commitment, a binding, computationally binding commitment to the PCP. After the prover is now committed to a specific PCP, he's going to apply the random oracle on this root, okay? So this is a random oracle. It's gonna hash the root, and this hash is gonna give him the PCP queries of the verifier, okay? So instead of having the verifier, toss coins by himself and decides which bits to read, we cannot allow this because the prover is not gonna actually send the entire PCP. The prover is gonna simulate the verifier by himself. So he simulates the randomness of the verifier. This is what's called the Fiat-Shamir paradigm. He simulates the randomness of the verifier by applying the random oracle on the root of the PCP. He gets randomness. This randomness defines the locations in the PCP that the verifier wants to read. Okay, and then what did he send? What does the proof contain? It contains the root, this root, the root of the PCP. Contains all the PCP answers to these queries. So these queries say, oh, I want to know this location, this location, and this location. Like let's say 3 locations. Okay, so it's gonna contain the value of the PCP in these locations, and then it's gonna contain all the authentication paths. Okay, this is the authentication passes from the Merkle tree. So if you want to authenticate that indeed the value here, let's say I had a value here of 7, the value 7 indeed is the fourth root, the fourth leaf that sat in the commitment for this root, then you need to send all the nodes along this and all the brothers. Okay, so I need to send this one and this one and this and this one and this one and this one and this one and this one. Okay, but it's only like more or less log n nodes to authenticate a single element. So this is what the approver does. He writes the PTP, computes the Merkle tree, derives PCP randomness for the verifier, and sends the root authentication path for all the queries. What does the verifier do? Well, he reads the PCP answers, and he sees that indeed these are answers that make the PCP verifier accept. And once he's done with that, he verifies that these answers are indeed the right answers. These are what are hidden inside the commitment. So he verifies all the authentication paths. Okay. Okay, moving on. One question is, what is the size of this proof? Okay. I hope you have a feeling or have an understanding of how it works, and if not, we're going to go over this again a bit. But like one question, what is the size of pi? Okay, so it contains the root. We have to see, is this a large proof? Is this small? How small it is? Okay, it does seem succinct, okay, because we're not sending the entire PCP, which is huge. We're sending only locations and the paths, but let's try to compute how large it is. And before I go into the details of actually, computing this, let me give you a one slide of too long didn't listen. Maybe it should be here actually. So Micali's construction has something that I call a quadratic argument size, and we'll see quadratic in what, okay, but it's the quadratic argument size. And we give a new construction that's going to be based on Micali that has a slightly sub-quadratic argument size. And this is really the first improvement to the size of Micali's construction in 25 years. So even the BCS construction eventually has the same, at least asymptotically speaking, has the same argument size. Okay, what they do is replace the PCP with an IOP and get extremely efficient and practical parameters, but theoretically speaking, they have the same argument size. Okay, so a slight warning, a little bit of math ahead. Maybe this is a warning, maybe this is just an indicator that the interesting part is kicking in. Okay, so what is the size of Micali? So suppose Micali, in the Micali's construction, we use the PCP, and the PCP length, okay, the number of leaves is L, so we have L leaves. We have an alphabet sigma, okay? So you can think of a binary alphabet, like the bits of the PCP being 0, 1, but it could be over some other finite field. And we have the number of queries of the PCP, okay? This is Q. Once you have these parameters, then you can write the size. It's Q log sigma, because we need to write the Q answers to the PCP. Every answer is log sigma, okay? So writing the bits of the field element, and we have Q queries. And then you have to authenticate each query. So if you want to authenticate each query, so we have Q queries, so it's Q. And then we have a lambda here. So lambda is the length of the random oracle, okay? So every node is lambda. And we have more or less log n, okay, log n nodes, okay? Because we have to send along the depth of the tree. Okay, so L is the number of leaves, and we have log n. Okay, so this is the size of Micali. And now we have to go back to our definition of T epsilon security, okay? And, okay, I have this, but, what is the length of the random oracle? How many queries does the PCP have, okay? So I'm telling you, I want, please go and build me a SNARG that has T epsilon security. Okay, and like you give me some specific parameters for T and epsilon. Okay, like this is, I don't know, 2 to the 100, and epsilon is 2 to the minus 100, and we'll talk about like settings of these parameters. Okay, but for now, they're just the variables. So I want T epsilon security. I want to claim that the random oracle, okay, has to be actually of size roughly log T over epsilon. Okay, so this log T over epsilon is going to play a part here. And we're going to talk about this for a second. Just take it with me for a second. The number of queries actually also has to be log T over epsilon. Okay, and if you believe me for this claim, okay, then what you get is that the argument size is quadratic. Okay, so what you get here, this is very small. You can just ignore it. And I'm going to even ignore the log L. Okay, just I'm going to give it for free. Like in this talk, I'm going to try to like remove these things. I'm thinking only of these two parameters, Q and lambda. Both of them need to be log T over epsilon. So we have log T over epsilon squared. Okay, so this is why Micali's construction is quadratic. And this OT is hiding all the small things that I don't want to like put in here. Okay. So now I need to at least convince you slightly, okay, before I get to like our results, why this is true, okay? So let me just, I want to like convey like a few attacks that are possible by a cheating prover, so we can see why can't we set the output lambda to be like very small, okay? Why not set this to be like 3? Okay, maybe the random oracle can output 3 bits. Okay, so so why is Micali's construction secure? Okay, it's secure because the cheating prover, like the security goes by saying the cheating prover can do nothing but compute a PCP. Okay, but if X is not in the language, like if the claim is false, then any PCP is not a valid PCP. After he computes some invalid PCP, he commits to it to get the PCP randomness, okay? But then this verifier is gonna reject, okay? So you can try to build commitments and get queries, but then the verifier is gonna reject, and this is why like he has no chance. So one thing we need is that this Merkle tree has to be a commitment, okay? So one thing that the cheating prover can try to do is find a collision. It's going to be a collision attack. So if he's like computing this tree, okay, and this could be like part of the tree, he could take some node here and he has like 2 values, V0, V1 that hash to U, and he can try to find another pair of values, V0 prime and V1 prime, that hash to the same symbol U, okay? If he managed to do that, then he has a collision. And this means he can, like, if this is a leaf, he can actually open this to either V0 or V0 prime. So he has 2 possibilities to open, and this actually gives him leverage. So let's say I see there's a okay. So.
Hey, Alex, do you want to just check if people can unmute themselves?
Okay, so somebody's asking what is T?
Yeah, I can. Well, you can probably see it in the comments. I'll let you. Oh, never mind. Looks like you maybe answered Ariel's question.
It's always good to read out the question though, because this is going to be a video afterwards.
Yeah. So T is not T is the number of queries that we are allowing the cheating prover to do. Okay, and L is the size of the PCP. Yeah, so it's not T cubed, we just have a log L there. Okay, so T and L are 2 different.
Yeah, real quick.
I hope that answers.
Sorry to interrupt. For the benefit of the viewers of the YouTube channel, the question was, what was T circuit size? Doesn't L equal PCP length, also at least T, in which case the lower bound is actually T cubed, 1 over epsilon squared instead of T over epsilon squared. So, and then.
Yeah, so yeah, a good question. So no, L is the PCP length. So L is like going to be much shorter. So let's say our statement is of size, 2 to the 20. Okay, just for like an example, but T is going to be the security that we want. So T is like 2 to the 100 or 2 to the 200 or something like much larger than that. Okay, and but you're right that I'm missing like a log L here, and I'm saying like I'm trying to like focus on the important parameters. Okay, so we said that. Okay, so we said that if the attacker finds a collision, then this commitment wasn't a commitment, and then he can open in various ways, and he can actually cheat the PCP, and he could fool us. Another attack is what I call an inversion attack. Okay, so here's just one attack that the cheating prover can do. Okay, he can start by just querying the root without building any tree behind it. Okay, so there's an invisible tree here. He just queries the root and says, oh, this is the PCP queries for this root. Okay. Once he knows in advance the PCP queries, it's easy to find a PCP that fools a verifier that's gonna use these specific queries. Okay. So the order is usually is reversed, right? I first commit to a PCP, and after I committed the PCP, the verifier is gonna choose the locations to read. If I know in advance the location is time to read, it's very easy to come up with a PCP that fools this verifier. Okay, so after he sees the PCP queries, he can say, okay, this is the PCP that's gonna win. Okay. So this PCP is fine. He starts to compute the Merkle tree. He stops here at the last step, okay? What's the problem? This last step might not hash to this root, okay? It's gonna hash to a different root, and then this different root is gonna define different queries. So he's gonna cross his fingers really hard and just hope that it's gonna hit this same root, okay? This happens with small probability, I agree, but this is a valid attack. Okay, and we have to take this into account, and I'm calling this inversion attack. Okay, because like he inverts the value of the root. Okay, like he has this value y, and he comes up with the x's after he sees y. Okay, so with this in mind, we can actually set lower bounds for lambda. So again, my claim was to get T epsilon security, you have to set lambda to be log T over epsilon. So let's just see this. So this is just the inversion root that I said. You can guess the root in advance and derive a fooling PCP. Okay. The probability of success is the probability that in this last step I hit this. This is a really small probability. It's 2 to the lambda. Okay, 2 to the minus lambda. But I can try this T times. Okay, or roughly T times. Okay, because it didn't cost me a lot of queries to try this. Okay, it cost me like roughly L queries. Okay, so I can repeat this, not T times, but T over L. Let's forget about these small parameters here. So if I repeat this T times, my success probability is actually T times 2 to the minus lambda. Okay, so I have this rare event of success. I try T times. And now we said T epsilon security. We said that if you have T queries, your success probability should be at most epsilon. And this is the success probability. So this must be at most epsilon. And if you rearrange this, you just get that lambda is log T over epsilon. Okay, so this is like one lower bound saying, okay, lambda cannot be like too small. It has to be at least log T over epsilon. Okay, so maybe I'll go back. We had this, okay, and now the second statement. What about the PCP? Maybe the PCP has 3 queries, and then this is just 3 times lambda, okay, and I don't have the quadratic thing. Okay, so now I'm going to claim that to get T epsilon security, the number of queries of a PCP must be log T over epsilon. And this is slightly trickier to prove, okay, and I'm not going to show you the entire proof, but let's see what we want from the PCP, okay? And in particular, this is actually like a conditional result, like If P equals NP, then actually we have PCPs with 0 queries, right? Because the verifier can compute anything by himself. Okay, so you have to like assume some computational assumption here. So I claim that we want the PCP soundness. Okay, so the error of the PCP should be actually much smaller than this epsilon. It has to be an error epsilon PCP, which is epsilon over T. Okay, and why is this? This is because the cheating prover can just try to fool the PCP T times. He can just commit to a random PCP. Okay, just take a random PCP, random string, commit to it, get the queries of the verifier, see if by any chance the verifier accepts. Okay, if he accepts, fine, like he has a fooling proof. If not, he just starts again with like a new random string and does the same. So again, he can try this T times, and every time he does, he has like an epsilon PCP probability of winning. And so if you want the probability to be epsilon, you have to set epsilon PCP to be epsilon over T. Okay, and for PCPs, and in a recent work with Ale, actually, we also saw that the same holds for IOPs, assuming what's called the ETH, the exponential time hypothesis. This is like some strong version of P versus NP. Okay, this says like NP is not only like different than P, like P versus NP says like you cannot solve NP in polynomial time. The ETH says that you actually need exponential time, like strictly exponential time to solve NP. So under this today, like wildly, I would say believable assumption, then the number of queries is always log 1 over the epsilon PCP. Okay, and if we plug this in, we get again log T over epsilon. Okay. So we had the Micali construction, which had this log T over epsilon squared. You could show like quite easy to show lower bound of log T over epsilon. This is like the best we can hope for. Okay. And this is the state of affairs. And now I can say what our result is, okay, with all these notation. There exists a SNARG in the random oracle model that achieves log T over epsilon times log T. Okay, so instead of log T over epsilon squared, log T over epsilon times log T. So it's slightly subquadratic. I'll say one thing about the general approach. We'll see the construction a bit. I'm not sure how much time I have, but
yeah, you still got technically we've got 45 minutes left of the session. So yeah, it depends on how much time you want to leave for questions at the end.
Yeah, okay. I think that would be like too much. People will get too tired. Okay, so I'll just like intrigue you at this point for one thing about our proof. What we do, we use like a similar paradigm, but slightly different. Instead of starting with like a PCP or an IOP, we start with like some strong variant of a PCP. Okay, so like it has some strong soundness notion. We combine it with a weak cryptographic commitment. So this is something that's actually not going to be a commitment. Okay, it's going to allow the cheating prover to open to like different possibilities, just not all possibilities. It's going to still limit him some way. And together we're going to get this subquadratic storm. And just putting this back on the scale that we saw before. You know, I still would say that it's like much closer to this than to the lower bound. Okay, like between our work and the lower bound, there's like a huge gap here. And I'll just mention like a very, very recent work that's not like published yet, in a joint work with Iftar Heitner from Tel Aviv and his master student, Daniel. We showed that this is actually the correct answer. This is tight. Okay, so we show a lower bound that matches this expression exactly. But our lower bound works for a family of constructions. So it's not like a completely general lower bound. It captures some family of constructions. This family captures all the constructions we know today. Okay, but it's still plausible that is some construction that beats this, just maybe we have to like think outside the box. Okay, it's not the same you know, tools and methods that we're used to. Okay. So the way I show the result is like very theoretical, hiding many things under this O tilde notation. I want to say that I'm mainly hiding it for this simplicity of the talk. We actually worked very hard to get like very tight and concrete parameters in our analysis. And what I have here is a table comparing like the standard Micali SNARG, okay, with our improvement. You can do the same for BCS if you know like the BCS construction, just you do the same round by round, okay? So like I'm comparing like a single round here. And what you can see in red is Micali and in blue is our, so this is like the actual size of the SNARG. And you can see the improvements here. You can go here to like my favorite part of the table where we have like the best improvement. So like here you get like a factor of 2 improvement. But so this is like when t is slightly small and log 1 over epsilon is quite big. But like even in these parts of the table, you get the improvement. So I want to talk like half a minute. So what should I, you know, what is t and epsilon? Okay, what should I plug in there? So this is actually a big discussion and could be like a big debate. I'm not gonna like go over all different pros and cons and what is like the right definition of, okay, what does it mean when I say that my system has 128 bits of security? Okay, this is like a sentence that is not exactly well defined, and if you define it, then maybe why is that the right definition? I'm just gonna say it actually can depend on different settings. So like one common approach is like, yeah, just set t to be 1 over epsilon. So for example, t is 2 to the 128 and epsilon is 2 to the minus 128. Okay, so this is one setting, a very natural setting. So this is this, you know, the diagonal of this matrix here. Okay, so we get like some reasonable improvements there. There's 2 other settings that, you know, I call here the online and offline setting. I'm not sure like if it's the right terminology, but the online setting says, you know, what happens if I have a SNARG and it's online? So like I go to, you know, my bank and I say, how much money do I have? And they give me an answer and give me a proof that this is actually the amount I have in my account. Okay, like a SNARG proof. And, you know, I wait for 1 second for the response. If they don't give me the response after 1 second, then, you know, I ignore what they say. Okay, and if I want, I can just requery like with new randomness or something like that. So in this online setting, if like I'm limiting the prover to work within like 1 second, then the cheating prover also has only 1 second to work. Now, it could be the case that there's like billions of people doing this around the world. So I still need the probability of a cheating prover to succeed to be like very small, let's say 2 to the minus 100. Okay, so like I know it never happens, but I can actually set the t, okay, to be something small, maybe 2 to the 40. Okay, if I assume like the cheating prover cannot do more than 2 to the 40 operations in less than a second. Okay, so this would actually correspond to this area of the table. Okay, and of course you have like the offline setting saying, you know what, epsilon is something like 2 to the minus 10. Okay, but I don't care, like I'm setting t to be huge, 2 to the 128. So even if you run in an offline mode, like you have a lot of time, okay, you cannot give me some false proof. Okay. Any questions about this? Or suggestions for other settings? Okay, so in the rest of the talk, really just the last 3 minutes, I'm going to try to describe the new construction. We're not going to see the proof. I'm just going to like say what the tricks are to get this better security. Okay, So our starting point is Micali's construction. Okay, so think in your mind the same construction. You have a PCP, you hash the root, and then you give the openings of the locations that the verifier wants to see. We're actually going to set the random oracle to be log t, not log t over epsilon. Okay. This is great because it makes the proof smaller. Okay, right? The problem is, as I said, I gave you like explicit attacks telling you that you cannot do this. Okay, so now we're actually gonna need to handle these attacks. Okay, and this is what we do. So we make 4 changes to Micali. We're chopping the tree, we're doing domain separation, permuting the proof, and using robust PCPs. I'm gonna quickly say something about each one of them. And I just want to say that all of these changes do not increase the argument size, okay? So we reduce the argument size by reducing this, and these changes do not increase the argument size. We're going to see why. Each one of them adds slightly security, okay? But combined, they actually give us the security that we want, and they allow us to reduce the output of the random oracle, okay, and get a reduced SNARG. And our analysis even works with salts, okay? I'm not gonna go into depth here, but like if you wanna eventually show that the proof is also zero knowledge, okay? And this is a zero knowledge study group, so I guess it's a desired property. Then you need to allow like the prover putting salts in the leaves, and our analysis is fine with that also, okay? So like we don't lose the zero knowledge properties, this is just slightly harder things to prove that I'm not gonna go into here. Okay, so what do I mean by chopped tree? So we have the PCP, we compute the root, we apply this to get PCP randomness. Okay, the queries for the PCP. This is the Micali construction. What we're gonna do, we're gonna stop the miracle tree at some layer. Okay, we're gonna chop this tree. Okay, at some layer that I'm calling I star. Okay, and we'll see what this layer is. And now instead of a root, I don't have the root of the tree anymore. Okay, I stopped at some layer. Okay, I computed 1, 2, 3 layers and I stopped. Possibly there's like more than 2 nodes here. There could be many nodes here. Okay, so I'm calling this the cap. Okay, like the cap of the tree. Now, what does the prover do? He takes this cap. He takes this cap. He takes all the nodes in the cap. He concatenates them to one like big string, and he uses this as if it was the root. He's gonna apply the random oracle to this huge string and get the PCP randomness, and then open the locations. Okay, so he's gonna do the same, just he doesn't apply the random oracle to the root, he applies it to the cap, to the entire set of nodes in the cap. Okay, like concatenate it together. Okay, so if I star equals 0, this is just Micali. Okay, you go to the root and you do the root. I did nothing. Okay. If I star equals log L meaning it's just this layer here, it's just sending the entire PCP. Okay. So this is very secure. Like this is very much secure. Just a huge proof. Okay. So as I star gets larger, you actually get more and more security. The security is higher, but the argument size is larger, okay? And this is not a trade-off like in our favor, okay? We get, if you put instead of I star +1, you get slightly better security and like a huge increasement in the argument size, except for one special layer, okay? There's actually one special layer, and this is layer log Q, where we get much better security and we get the same argument size. Okay, and so I want to explain why. So what is log Q? Q is the number of queries to the PCP, right? And in level log Q, so if this is level log Q, okay, in a binary tree, this level has Q nodes. And if anyway the honest prover needs to open Q locations for the PCP, okay, and for every location he sends all the nodes in the path, okay, then he's actually probably sending all this layer anyway. okay? Because he's sending Q queries. They're usually going to be quite randomly around this. So maybe not all, but let's say, you know, at least half, okay? So he's going to send like almost the entire layer anyway. So we're just saying, send the entire layer and that's it, okay? It doesn't really increase the argument size, okay? And it increases the root because the cap is like much larger in the root, but these things are anyway inside the authentication paths, okay? And why do we get better security? So if you remember the inversion attack we had before, where the prover, where this inversion attack actually proved that lambda has to be log t over epsilon, the prover just guessed the root in advance and then got the PCP and so on. Here he cannot guess the root in advance. Like, what can he do? He can try to guess the entire cap in advance, but this is huge. Like, this is like extremely small probability, which you really can ignore, okay? What he can do is he can try to guess like one node of this cap in advance. If he guesses one node, it gives him control over this part of the PCP, not over the entire PCP. So it gives him like some leverage, okay? But what we do, and that's why we use a stronger PCP, we can show that, you know, if he guesses one node, he gets slightly leverage over the PCP, and we can handle this, okay? He cannot fool us, okay? The verifier is still gonna catch it, okay? Maybe with slightly different probabilities, okay? But what he cannot do is like attack one node, and once he succeeds, controls the entire PCP, okay? This he cannot do. He now needs to attack many, many nodes to control the entire PCP. Okay. So now change number 2, this is domain separation. This is actually a very, very easy thing to do, and I actually advise everybody to do this. So we're gonna, theoretically speaking, we're gonna use a different random oracle for each location in the tree, okay? And I just wanna say that this is actually very easy to achieve. You just add a prefix, okay, to all locations. Okay, so this is a random oracle. So if I add like a prefix of Eylon Yogev, then I can like have my own random oracle where for every query X, I just have Eylon Yogev and then X. Okay, so we're gonna do the same for every location ij in the tree. So if I'm hashing now layer I and node j in the tree, I just use this prefix ij. Okay, why is this helpful? This, you don't have to write this in the proof, and the verifier does the same. So it's really like, has negligible effect on the system, but it prevents reusing inversions or collisions, okay? So if I go back, if by chance the prover managed to attack, let's say this node, okay, or find a collision or inversion, if he wants to now attack this node, he has to start from scratch, okay? There's nothing that you can tell me about this part that tells you something about this part, okay? Because they have different prefixes. Okay, so it's like a new collision or a new inversion. Okay, so this is now the new construction. We're gonna stop here at some layer I star, and we're gonna add the prefixes. Okay, so we have all the prefixes. So this is like node 1.1, this is node 1.2, 1.3, this is 2.1, and so on. So all these prefixes go into the name of the node. The third thing is permuting the proof. So this is a slightly more like a theoretical tool that we need. I think in practice, in many constructions, you actually don't need this. But it could be the case that like the PCP is very weird, okay? Because I want to have a construction that works for any PCP, okay? Like not a nice PCP. So it could be that the like entire interesting part of the PCP is like only here, okay? And here nothing happens actually. So I don't want like all the queries to be in one subtree of a node, okay? I want the prover to have to attack this node and this node and this node and this node in order to succeed, okay? So I want the queries to be spread out. So either you assume your PCP has like random queries, which is like usually close to being the case, okay, anyway, or what you do is just you permute the proof, okay? So we assume we have like some random permutation over L. I'm just gonna assume it for simplicity here. You can actually implement this with a random oracle. And what you're going to do, instead of writing the PCP, you're going to write the permuted version of the PCP. So you're just switching the locations, okay? So location I of the PCP goes to some random location permutation of I. And this permutation is shared between the verifier and the prover, okay? And this really just has the effect that all the queries are random, okay? Because if before in the PCP, I actually was doing query like 1, 2, 3, now I'm doing queries pi of 1, pi of 2, pi of 3, and these go to random location, okay? So this really goes back for why we do domain separations, okay? Because the queries are going to be in different places, and now he has to work harder and harder for each place of the PCP that he wants to attack. And the final change is we're going to use some stronger notion of a PCP that's a more robust PCP. So this is actually a permuted robust PCP because we're permuting the proof. Is there any question? Did I get the time?
Just somebody asking about the timing.
Okay.
Hi, welcome. Yeah, so I guess just quick admin note. Yeah, 9 a.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central European is typically when we run these, but this is recorded, thankfully, so you can catch it later. Go ahead and continue, Eylon.
Okay. So we're going to use some notion of a PCP, like a robust PCP. So just what is the intuition of a robust PCP? I'm not going to like later go into the exact definition that we use. So a PCP is a proof system where the prover sends a proof, right? He commits to the proof, that's it. He writes it on the table. Then the verifier chooses, 3 locations, and he looks at the PCP and he decides to accept or reject, okay? In a robust PCP, we're going to allow the prover, the cheating prover, to change a few locations of the PCP after he sees the queries of the verifier, okay? So we cannot allow him to change all the locations. That's just like a too strong creature to exist, okay? But it's a robust PCP in the sense that he sends a PCP, the verifier sends, you know what, I want to see, symbols in the locations 5, 10, and 20. And then the cheating prover looks at this. He can, like, let's say, choose one location and change what is written in the PCP, and then give these locations back to the verifier. Okay, this is a robust PCP. Okay, it's robust because the local view of the verifier is not only going to be a rejecting view, it's actually going to be far from rejecting. Okay, the distance between the local view and an accepting view is going to be large. And we're going to measure this distance with blocks, okay? Because actually, when you think of the Merkle tree, every node, so the nodes, so these nodes of the cap, they define some blocks, because I can attack this one, and then I can completely control all these nodes, all of these nodes, okay? So this is going to be like the length of the block. And then the distance, we're going to define the distance in terms of the blockwise distance, okay? So just a simple example here, think of these 2 strings, okay? What is the distance between them, okay? So all of these are the same, all of these are the same. They only differ in this block. So this is the same, this is different, okay? And this is different. But even though they differ in 2 locations, the distance is 1, okay? Because they only differ in 1 block. So only 1 block is different. Okay, this is gonna take me too much time. I'm gonna skip the precise definition, okay? So the final construction is we're gonna have a cap here. We're gonna chop the tree. We're gonna use domain separation. We're gonna permute the PCP. And it's not going to be just any standard PCP. It's going to be a robust PCP. Okay, so these are the 4 changes for the construction. And with these 4 changes, we can really show that even though the random oracle was very small, the cheating prover can actually find collisions, and he can actually perform inversions, okay? He's not committed to any single location here. But the probability that he, attacks some node, meaning he finds a collision or inversions, is not extremely small, but it's somewhat small. But if he does it, it gives the cheating prover just a slight advantage, okay? Because let's say he finds a collision here, then yes, these two locations he can open in two different ways, okay? So he's not committed to these locations, but because the PCP is robust, okay, that's gonna be fine. That's gonna be fine. If he wants to change more locations, he has to find another collision, not only here, but here and here and here, okay? And the probability of him finding, let's say, K collisions is like going exponentially down with K, okay? So we can really like balance out the probability that he gains power with the amount of power that this gives him. So I'm not going to go in the actual proof. I'm just going to say it goes in 2 steps. We show that if you have this magical permuted robust PCP, okay, and instead of the standard commitment, you take this commitment with a chopped tree domain separation and permutation, what you get is a subquadratic SNARGs. And the second step is actually constructing these robust PCPs. And what we show is that these PCPs are actually not so hard to construct. Actually, any PCP that you amplify by doing parallel repetition has this robust property that we want. Okay, so it's more showing like a property, a strong property that PCPs have, and not like, it's not like constructing a new PCP from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to skip all this math here. Yeah, and I'm just going to conclude. So we gave a SNARG construction that achieves an argument size of log t over epsilon times log t. The trivial lower bound is log t over epsilon. I mentioned that we have a new lower bound for some family of functions that actually shows that this is tight. But really the main major like open problem, and let me be optimistic here and like wishing that there actually are SNARGs in the random oracle model that achieves size log t over epsilon. Okay, this would be like an amazing result, both theoretical and practical. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Eylon. Does anyone have any questions from the group? If not, I have a couple. Okay, I guess I'll start. I have a few questions. The first question is, when you use the term like weak commitment scheme, like in practical terms, how am I to think about that? Is that like using a 160-bit hash function versus a 256-bit? Like, how do I kind of consider that in the context of practical applications?
Yeah, excellent. So so this depends on exactly what like your t and epsilon, okay, should be. But in general, like if you want 128 bits of security, you're gonna set the output of the hash to be actually at least 256, or actually even more than that, okay? If you want like the probability of finding collision. So if you set it to 256, you get that the probability of finding collision, if you allow me to run in time 2 to the 128, it's actually half, okay? And if you want the probability that I find a collision to be like smaller, like 2 to the minus 128, then you actually have to set the hash to be even larger than that, okay? And yeah, what we're saying here is you can set lambda to be smaller, okay? Let's say you set it to be 256, okay? But I can prove to you, or even less than 256. So the attacker has a probability of finding a collision. It's not that he's gonna find it with probability 1, okay? He has a probability of finding a collision, but what I'm showing is that in our construction, finding a collision is not that harmful. Okay, so the scheme is going to handle like collisions. I don't want the attacker to find like a million collisions. Okay, if he finds like a million collisions, then he broke us. But finding a million different collisions, that's hard, and that's why we use the domain separation. Okay, so you cannot reuse collisions. You cannot find one and just reuse it a million times. He has to like work from scratch each time.
Got it. Thanks. Second question for me is you mentioned kind of these 4 changes you made. Are each of the to achieve this result? Are each of those 4 are they hard requirements, or are, you know, I guess what's the relative contribution of each of those 4 changes to achieving this result?
Yeah. So like for the full analysis to hold, it's like the exact match of all 4 of them. Like each one pushes the adversary to a different corner, and like you have to have you know, all 4 corners.
Yeah, from a theoretical standpoint, I get that. I guess I'm curious actually, and maybe you know you don't have an opinion, but so, in practical terms, like you mentioned, permuting the PCP. So certain PCPs have certain properties, but you know potentially could there be large families of constructions that could be maybe made to work with 3 of the 4 assumptions or changes.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
So these are the 4 changes.
Yep.
So first, let me say that practically speaking, so you know, 1, 2, and 3 are changes that are extremely easy to implement. Like they don't really cost anything, especially 1 and 2. Okay. So like 1 says actually just stop before. Okay, so it's actually like even more efficient. Okay, domain separation is just adding the INJ. Okay, so these are like extremely easy things. Practically speaking, I would say 1 and 2 are like the main components that you need. Okay, this really prevents chopping the tree, prevents like the weakest spot of Micali, which is the root. Okay, so it really makes that part stronger. And the domain separation, like you have to have it. Okay, otherwise like 1 collision and that's it, like the attacker wins. Okay, so these 2 simple things are mandatory. Permuting the proof, I would say that, you know, it depends on what you're using. If you're using like standard IOPs and the Fry protocol, then the queries are like quite random. Okay, so maybe this is not entirely necessary there. And robust PCPs, then I would say it might just be like like the same IOP, the same protocol. This is not exactly a change. It would just be like maybe proving something slightly stronger about the PCP that you're already using. Okay, and you can try to use our analysis to like, so I would assume that like Fry already has like a lot of these properties.
Cool. Oh, Ariel wants to jump in and ask a question. Ariel, do you want to say it or do you want me to read it? You tell me. I don't know where you are. Maybe look somewhere.
Is there an attack showing 1 and 2? Only cannot get you down from log squared T over epsilon.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So yeah, there is. So for each one, like any change you make, I can show an attack. Okay, these are, so sometimes you make changes only for the proof to work. Okay, and that's actually usually the case, like at least with a theoretical paper, right? Like, okay, I'm doing a construction because I know how to prove it. Okay, it doesn't mean that what you're doing in construction is necessary. But here actually, like these changes come from like attacks that we identified. So if you don't add the domain separation, okay, so maybe this like, okay, so if I have like a binary PCP, okay, and I don't have domain separation, then actually the attacker can find 1 collision, okay, between 0 and 1. He can use it in all the leaves of the PCP, and then he's like committed to nothing because he can open every location to either 0 or 1. Okay, if you have a PCP over a large alphabet, okay, which admittedly that is usually the case, and he finds a collision, then maybe he can open to 2 symbols and not 1. That maybe doesn't give him a lot of power, and that's actually a great way to go. Okay, if you can prove that your PCP is strong, okay, has this stronger soundness notion that even though the attacker can open to 2 locations and not 1, to 2 symbols in every location, it doesn't give him any advantage. Okay, so that's possible. But for a binary PCP like this, you have to have it. Okay, and the chop tree is just the attack, the inversion attack that I showed. If you don't chop the tree and you just let me have the root and you set this to be the root, I'll just try to guess the root. Any other questions?
I think, Ariel, that answered your question. If it didn't, just chime in the chat. The last question that I had was, you obviously used PCP throughout this slide deck. I'm assuming, for the person who watches this later or reads the paper, they can just swap out PCP for IOP if that's their preferred construction, the BCS construction. Is there anything to note if you choose to use an IOP as opposed to PCP?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually didn't do it in the paper. Okay, it's quite hard to analyze as is. But if you take this construction, you can see that we did it on a tree. So if you have an IOP and then you have many rounds of these, you have many trees, and so you would just do the same for every round, and you would get the same advantage. Okay, if this on Micali improved 20%, and then now you use an IOP, so okay, you have the advantage of an IOP, and now this is giving you 20% on every round of the IOP.
Cool.
Okay, but yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Any other questions from folks in the audience?
Some question here. I'm actually wondering if we replace the commitment being used for Merkle tree to polynomial commitment and then use batching. What do you think of this approach? Okay. So if you replace the Merkle tree, okay, the way we do commitment with any other commitment scheme, okay, could be a polynomial commitment scheme or vector commitment scheme or anything else, you might get actually a better construction. Okay, so you might be able to open many locations of the PCP without paying a huge price. Okay, so here we're paying lambda bits for every location of the PCP, and we have more or less lambda locations. Okay, so we're playing lambda squared, it's log t over epsilon squared. Okay, so we're paying a lot, and you can replace it with a different commitment. But these different commitments, like polynomial commitments, they require different assumptions. Okay, they require computational assumptions. So under computational assumptions, other constructions like Gross 16 and for bilinear maps and other, they can actually achieve something that's close to the lower bound. Okay, so we can get this. Okay, specifically if you replace the commitment scheme with something smarter, but it's not in the random oracle model. Okay, so it has some different assumption, maybe a setup, maybe not, maybe post-quantum, maybe not. Okay, and depends on efficiency. It's not a pure construction in the random oracle model.
Yeah, so this construction gives you information theoretic security in the random oracle model. Is that right? Yeah,
so in the random oracle model, this is just secure, period. No matter what future brings us. Okay, even if peak was NP and crypto dies, this construction is secure in the random oracle model. Okay, if you actually want to implement this, then you plug in SHA-256. But then you have one single assumption that there is a cryptographic hash function. And you can, of course, replace SHA-256 with some other function, or in 100 years from today, some other function that will come up. Okay, that's the only thing you have to do. We're not relying like on a specific, algebraic assumption on groups or something like that.
Cool. Well, Eylon, this was a great talk. Really enjoyed the presentation, and thank you very much for taking the time to come speak with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.